Hello wine lovers, Trophy Wine Hunter, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm doing a video on the upcoming Vancouver International Wine Festival. The Vancouver International Wine Festival is the largest wine festival in Canada. It's occurring this year between April 22nd to the 30th. And what I love about this festival is it's not just the tastings. The premier event is the international tastings, which happen on Thursday night, Friday night, I think Saturday afternoon and Saturday night. So there's 4 sessions of this. I will be at the Friday session, which is April 28th at night. I'm going with a bunch of my buddies, and so that'll be fun. There are 147 wineries participating this year from 17 countries. And so it's a chance for you to taste a lot of wine. So I'll talk about that at the end of this video. So that's the signature event of this wine festival. The other one is the Gala, Bacchanalian Gala, which occurs on April the 22nd. And that's a huge wine tasting dinner. There's like, I think, champagne and then 9 wines with a 5-course dinner and a live auction and a silent auction. So that's really great for collectors. So that's a kind of a black tie event. There's also wine seminars, wine mixers, and wine dinners. So I'm going to go through those also. I find that these wine seminars, dinners, mixers are really where you really learn. So for me, the wine gala and the international tastings are more like fun. They're really social. So if you're a beginner, it's great to do that. If you're, on a date night, that's a great social thing, or you're out with friends. I think it's a great social thing. It's a great chance for you to drink different wines. But as I'll talk about in the last part of this video, it's not as productive for me as a kind of a more experienced taster. I don't get as much out of it as I do with the dinners and the seminars. So there's minglers, which are more like lunches and kind of food, little bite-sized foods and tables. For me, those are really hard to learn because, I like to sit down and I like to actually take notes. Whereas if you're kind of just mingling, you're talking to other people, you've got things in your hand, it's really tough to take notes. And that's one of the principles that I've talked about in the past. You can drink a lot of wine, but a lot of times you'll just forget. You'll remember that day or the next day, but in 4 months, you'll never remember what that wine tasted like or what your feeling was. So I like to take notes whenever I can. And so that's a big part of it. I believe there are 5 or 6 seminars that are offered as part of the International Wine Festival. And I'll have a link, or I'll have the link in the comment section to the ticket section, and also to the Wine Festival's website. All of them are good, but I'm going to highlight 3 that I think are really of interest to me. On April 27th, there's one called The Shape of Wine, and that seminar is going to be led by Riedel's regional manager, Alicia Harker. So again, Riedel is a famous wine glass making company. And I think they pioneered the idea or the concept that, your glassware, the shape of it, the thickness of the glass can affect tremendously the taste of wine. So in this seminar, you will be able to sample Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir, and Cabernet Sauvignon in the Riedel glasses. I will have the price or you can check the price. I think it's $119, something like that. But you get a set of glasses to take home. So I think that's over compensates the actual cost of the seminar, because I think the glasses are supposed to be worth $178. But that's a really great learning experience in terms of just actually having someone lead the tasting and actually having the glasses physically, the different glasses, and then trying it out. So, it's quite dramatic actually when it's done correctly. It's a really neat thing to find how glassware and the shape of glass can actually affect your perception of the wine and the aromas and the taste. The second one is on April 28th. It's on Global Cru. And I think this is really interesting because this concept of cru came from France, but you see this word cru all over the place. So cru basically means a vineyard or group of vineyards that's recognized for superior quality. And they're gonna kind of go through different regions and what cru means in that region, and then give examples of that. So I think that's really neat. And then the last one will be on April 29th, called La Crema de la Crema, which is going to go through South American wine. So it'll be neat to kind of try kind of different types of wines from South America and how they highlight the different producers. So that's a real interest to me because I'm not that familiar with South American wines. I know Malbec, I like Malbec, but maybe I've underappreciated Chilean wines and other wines like Uruguayan wines. I haven't really put a lot of time and effort into that, so I'd love to learn more about that in the seminar. The one that's kind of the mix of learning and pleasure to me are the dinners. And so there's a couple of great ones, but generally speaking, these sell out very quickly after they're announced. I'm going to the Massy dinner, which is on April 26th at the Vancouver Club. That's sold out, but this celebrates the 250th harvest of the Boscani family. And Massy is a big Amarone producer, so that'll be really interesting to me. I'm not a big Amarone fan, so again, it's a learning experience for me, but it's also pleasurable because you're going to have the food from the Vancouver Club, and you can also do the pairings. One that's still available right now is called the Best of Uruguay dinner, which is also on April 26th at a restaurant called Hydra, Estario Mediterranean Cafe. I've been to that restaurant, really like that restaurant. It's a really nice restaurant in terms of the vibe, the design, and the food's great. So that's a great dinner, and it'll feature the wines of Bodega Garzon from Uruguay. So that's a really interesting dinner. I think they're about $225 a dinner, but if you think about it, you're getting a nice meal. I think it's 3 or 4 courses plus the wines. So it's a really nice night out. It's a mixture of social, and you learn a lot. I learn a lot from these dinners because you get to taste the wine not by itself, and I find it very difficult to just understand a wine just from a wine festival tasting and just from 2 seconds of tasting something. This next part of the video, I'm going to talk about how to kind of prepare for these tastings. And in everything in life, I think preparation is kind of important. If you just kind of, I know people like to be kind of casual about things, but I like to prepare because when you're going to the International Wine Festival tasting, I think it's like $100 tickets. So I like to, get my money's worth. So I want to be able to prepare. So these are kind of my tips in terms of getting the most out of a wine festival tasting or any type of tasting that you go to, like the Wine Spectator grand tastings. Okay, first thing is to get settled early. So from my perspective, tastings usually don't include dinner. There is some food, but that's, to me, I like to actually go and get settled early. I like to have a dinner beforehand, have some food in my stomach, and then go to the tasting and get prepared. It's going to be a huge lineup when the doors open up. So personally, I like to go a little bit later because it's going to be a rush of people at the beginning lining up to get in. You don't typically these tastings last 3 hours. You're not going to be tasting for 3 hours. So it doesn't really matter if you're there right at the early time, but I think you should actually get downtown or get close to the place that the tasting is at, have some dinner, relax, and then I would normally go to the tasting about between 30 minutes and 45 minutes after doors open. That should be sufficient time for people to clear out. So, and then, you don't waste the time actually lining up. Generally speaking, people are finished their tasting fairly early. Normally, people do not taste until the end. So the last hour of tasting, generally speaking, you'll be able to taste a lot more, a lot quicker because there won't be as many lines to be in. Likewise, the only negative point of that is sometimes the good wines run out by that time, and so you kind of have to prepare that you might not be able to taste some of your top choices. My next tip is be selective. This idea, even though there's at the international tastings, there's going to be like 300-400 wines available. You can't taste 300 and 400 wines. It's impossible that you're going to get any value out of that, other than you're just going to get really drunk. So be selective. So that's, again, gets down to preparation. The Vancouver International Wine Festival always has the booklet on the website prior to, about I think a week prior. So they tell you what wineries, and they generally tell you what wines are served. So do a little research. I will actually be doing that research. I do that for friends and clients every year. So I will be releasing my list, my roadmap, and also the wines that I think you should taste about maybe a week before. I'll do another video. So that kind of hopefully will be useful to people. So generally what I suggest to people is that they try to break up their night into maybe 3 separate sessions. And each section I would probably kind of sample between 10 to 15 wines. The reason being is your palate just can't be selective. And again, if you're just saying, I'm just there, trophy, for a good time, I don't care, I just want to get drunk, and well, okay, don't follow my rule. But if you really want to taste the wines, really 10 to 15 is really good. And then take a little break, maybe a 10 or 15 minute break, just walk around, get a little cheese, get some water, and then go again. But that really is your limit, because then you're actually being selective. Even if you take my suggestion, that's already like 45 samples, 30 to 45 samples, which is plenty. And really, I think that's kind of a manageable number. Any more than that, really, it just becomes foggy, everything that you're doing. And really, it's not beneficial actually for your wine education. Again, if you're just there for a good time, don't care, right? You can drink whatever. But you know, if you're really trying to get something out of this tasting, then be selective and kind of about 10 to 15 wines in one session. That's, to me, manageable. My next tip is basically have a plan. And again, have as much information as possible. Again, I will be trying to help out viewers and subscribers with my roadmap, what my suggestions are. And again, you know, if you have a roadmap, a plan, you're not just bouncing between tables. You have a kind of an order of how you do things, and you also have an order in terms of, you know, perhaps drinking white wines first and then red wines and dessert wines, not just a mix. And so a plan is usually good to just kind of make sure that you get the most out of the night. Last couple of tips. One of them is to take notes, and I've said this again in many other videos. If you can, and that's why we want to do about 10 to 15 wines per session, that allows you to have some time to take some notes of what you like, what you didn't like. It's very hectic, you're tasting, there's a lot of people, so really you're looking for very simple notes that you just remind you, or simple words that remind you what you felt, and then you go home and flush out those notes a little bit later, either that night or the next day. Maybe 3 or 4 words, you know, plums, floral, good tannin structure, things like that. Something that has meaning, not just I liked it. That's not really a tasting note, or, you know, smooth. I don't think that's really a tasting note. Kind of just a couple of 3 or 4 words, 3 or 4 descriptors, or kind of aromas or taste that you kind of had. That would be good to just give you a little bit of kind of reminder what you had. The next tip I have for you is, after you've tasted, go back for seconds, because the tasting that they usually give you is very small sample. It's really tough, and that's just your initial impression of the wine. After you've sampled the wines, I would go back to your favorites and just go back, and I would be just polite to the person and say, hey, listen, I've tasted, you know, I really enjoyed this wine. Do you mind if I, you know, have a nice pour? And then that wine you can really, hopefully, if you get a nicer pour, a little bit bigger pour, you can kind of enjoy that for the rest of the night. And then the last kind of tip is, I know I've said all this, but most important thing is to have fun. It is a fun event. It's a social event. I mean, you should do a little bit of planning, but it shouldn't be work. It should be really fun, have a good time, and really enjoy the whole, that's the whole joy of wine appreciation, is just sharing with people, seeing other people, and trying different varieties. So hopefully those are good tips, and hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Until next time, happy drinking.